got so far, and the phone rang right in the middle of doing this. So there we go. We're going to put some other colors over here in this rough foliage. I'm just going to act like nothing happened. We're just going to go on, because that's what we do. Let's put some of that yellow up here because it's at a diagonal. Let's let it repeat up here. Let's pull out some stuff here because this has just gotten soaked. Just a big dark blob like a Sasquatch in green. So let's get this. Pull out some limbs in this wonderful fir tree. Neat. It's not anything real confusing. These are kind of the secondary players in this painting, so I want them to be there, but I don't want them to take over. I want to take this. I'm going to put another little dark tree here. What I'm using is the corner of the corner of my flat brush. Whenever I start painting and I get a brush in my hand, I tend to use the same brush almost the whole time. I think most people do. I'm lifting right now using my paper towel. Some of this really dense pigment, so lighten this up a little bit. And we've got some kind of cool shapes going on there, I think. They may need to be fixed a little bit, but for right now, we're going to leave them alone. We're going to now look at the rocks that are in the foreground. I'm going to let the space around those trees dry just a little bit. I can see that it's very, very shiny. When it's very shiny, you can still lift. You can scratch in, but you risk the paint going down into the scratch versus leaving a good clean scratch. And I'm going to show you that in just a bit. So let's go ahead and let this kind of dry a little bit up here, and I'll work on the foreground down here where the water is. The same blue, pull out French ultramarine, and I like some cobalt for that, and the burnt sienna, which is one of my favorite colors, and it is almost orange. It goes on the color wheel. It's going to be over on the orange side of things. And I'm going to go ahead and put down some sides of this rock here, and I'm going to take the side of my brush and do what's called scumble right here, which allows the tooth of the paper to pick up the paint but not go down into the paper itself. It gives you a little bit of a rough texture. Water is going to be rough texture. Here at the top of the waterfall, I'm going to put a tiny bit of water in there because it got really dry there. I'm going to come here at the top. Same thing with the side of my brush. I'm just pulling it down all the way at the lip of the fall. We know that underneath that waterfall there's rock, and they're dark. So if it starts drawing back too light, we can come in and charge in a little bit there so that the dark is back underneath there, and the dark is what's going to show the light, and that's a good thing. That's what we want. Here's some more rocks, so we're going to go ahead and pull it down, and as it comes close to the water, I'm going to do that same thing where I scumble it in. Here's another little part of the waterfall. I'm going to scumble it in. It's hitting the top of the rock, and it's going to be tossed right over top of it. Okay? You're soaking all this up, right? I know you are. Good. It is a matter of practice. There's no right, totally right, and totally wrong way to do anything when it comes to any of this painting. There are better ways, and there are easier ways. Sometimes you're going to stumble on those easy and better ways yourself. But you're not going to do it unless you're painting. Unless you're getting to that palette, that pigment, and that wonderful paper every day. At least every other day. Or get your dishes done and whatever it is you got to do. get in there and paint. Over here on this side, I'm going to snug this dark up underneath here a little bit and do a little bit of negative painting into the area. Kind of dodging the thing that's holding my camera right now. So if it shakes, forgive me, sorry. I don't know. You know, when you're a painter and you're not a videographer, it can get a little hairy. Dueling paintbrushes. Come down here to this. We've got another rock right here. I'm going to preserve the top of it. And we'll make some really strong dark here. Variety is the spice of life. And so sometimes you're going to put rocks in one way and sometimes you're going to put rocks in another. What I'm doing right now is I'm putting some really thick pigment down. We don't want to let your eye exit the paper before we want it to. So as this continues now to dry just a little tiny bit, I'm going to look up here underneath these little whatever they are. Make sure that the shoreline is preserved back there. And I'm going to go ahead and put some more just gentle little indications that the water is moving here. And then I'm going to get my trusty razor blade out, which is a single edge razor blade. And I'm going to pull down and shape my rocks a little bit better. I'm actually going to reach up into the back a little bit, preserve the whites that I can. Fingers make nice little paintbrushes too. I'm actually squeegeing down with this razor blade, trying not to make the same marks all the time. That's hard to do. We get to be real regular with these marks sometimes and they look a little bit like little boxes, but where I put the burnt sienna there, you can see it's coming out now, the stain of it. Let's go with that around with my finger. Here's in the foreground, there, and there. Some rocks. Yay, rocks. Let's go ahead and make this a little bit rougher there too. And you need to step back every now and then and kind of look at it and see what in the world's going on. I'll go ahead right here and put in, now that this paper is losing its shine, I can scratch in some trees that are poking up through the evergreens. And the lines are going to end up being scratched and looking white. Kind of dig that, okay. And let's straighten this up a bit with this dry brush. And now we're going to put these trees in, and for the most part, that's kind of the painting. We can do a few other little things if you want to, just for fun. If I can find a toothbrush. Over here where this is going on, we can go over here into the yellow, get some, test it there. We can kind of splat around a little bit so that there's more rough texture about that plant than we're seeing there. That just adds a little bit of woohoo to it. Put some of that over here just for the fun of it. Let's pretend like these trees are getting ready to come out. My dog's going to come down here, and they can't right now. And probably there's a squirrel at the feeder. That always annoys the heck out of them. Okay, let's go ahead and get these trees in here, and then we're going to call it quits. Okay, so on this side of this tree, I'm going to pull that in. Dry that brush again, get the water off of it. Then I'm going to just gently pull it down right there. Nice warm tree with a dark side to it. And same thing on this one. We're going to go on this side to put the dark. My dogs went to the groom room today, and I'd hoped they'd be tired enough and would not be barking up there, but apparently that is not the case. I think they hear me down here talking and think, she's supposed to be talking to me. Let's lift a little bit of that out so good. And we need to put some branches on that. And for that, I love to use a brush that is called either a striper, or there's one called a loose goose, which I think is a really nice name. Kind of suits us, doesn't it? I'm using my loose goose right now to clean up a little bit of an edge. This waterfall kind of does a curve thing. And I've noticed I'm losing some definition back here. So before it goes away too much, let's pick some of this up. Okay, there you go. Let's go into this nice dark right here. And that's French ultramarine. And we're going to pull again burnt sienna and maybe a little bit of a alizarin crimson. And we're going to come here on this dark side of this tree and pull out a few branches. Go ahead and darken the edge of that tree a little bit more. Okay. This brush is great because it can make thick lines or thin lines depending on what you want. And it gives you the ability to do some great calligraphy, which is always a nice counterpoint when you're doing a lot of very loosey-goosey, juicy paint work. And I don't know, go down in here a little bit with that. Go here. Let's scratch a few grassy things right here because it makes me feel good to do. I'm losing some of the shapes here on my rock, so let's fix them. They're just looking like blobs. I don't want blobs. If I wanted blobs, I'd have put blobs. It's just a piece of paper, after all. You don't need to worry about it a whole lot. Didn't work this time. It'll probably work next time. And you have learned something in the process, regardless of what happens when you're working. If we get too emotionally attached to it, we probably won't move forward at all. So it's better to just understand that every time you get there with that piece of paper, it's a new experiment, which may or may not work. But the more you practice, like using anything else, like I mentioned, using the clutch earlier, there's a point where that clutch, you just go into it automatically. You don't have to think about it anymore. Probably use a few more branches around here, but I think that's enough. You get the idea. So here you go, from preliminary drawing to painting. Used very limited palette. I think it looks okay. Got one more rock that's bothering me here though. Whoops, let's get this rock to have a top to it. It's got some water coming over. You'll see these things. Come back and just fix them up a little bit. They'll be all right. You can also come back, just one more thing, I know, I said it was done, and here I am. Keep it on, keep it on. You can come back and darken up some parts of things if you want to. It may have gotten a little bit lost. Because everything's wet, it's going to hold those shapes pretty well and allow you to define what you want to define. So there you go. Wet on Wet, Watercolor 101. Thanks.